So let's just take a moment, as always, to settle in, to welcome in the awareness of the divine presence that's always with us, even if our human consciousness is not aware of it.
Mhm.
There's only one presence, there's only one power, there's only one love active in my life, active in this community, active in the universe, God the good, omnipotent. And in that consciousness, I'm going to find our daily word here and invite our daily word reader to share that with us. Let's see. Here we go.
There it is, release. I release old beliefs as I grow and evolve. So many things shaped my beliefs over the years, my upbringing, family, family history, education, friendships, and spiritual life, to name a few. As I go through life, I will have new experiences and meet all kinds of people. I may find old beliefs that once fit me well, fit me no longer. Growing and deepening in spiritual understanding may mean releasing ways of thinking that no longer serve me. But I can do that and still honor the person I was, my background, and my history. Releasing makes room in my mind and opens my heart for the person I am becoming. Releasing old beliefs readies me for a future of growth and evolution. And from Jeremiah 40, now look, I have just released you today from the fetters on your hands. See, the whole land is before you. Go wherever you think it good and right to go.
Wow. Thanks, Lillian.
Well, you're
I
welcome.
release old beliefs as I grow and evolve. Let's affirm that together. I
I
release
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 old
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 beliefs
beliefs
as I
beliefs
grow
as
as
and
I
I grow
grow
and
evolve.
and
evolve.
evolve.
Ah, that feels good.
Can I comment on that, Marty?
Yeah, of course.
I that This daily word makes leads me to think of Charles Fillmore when he said, and you often quote Marty, "I reserve the right to change my mind." And when I first heard that, that was kind of like, "What? No!" And when you say something, you do it forever. But um, I don't know. I don't know if that was my mother or my father. What do you think, Lillian? But anyway, but
Dad.
anyway, you know, this is such powerful permission to each day kind of evaluate what's working for you. And if it's not working for you, then don't do it or work on releasing it. And so that's what the daily word today made me think of, is Fillmore and my own Virgo stubbornness to hang on to things, because I said it, because I said I was going to do it or I believed it. So yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks for that insight.
Okay, one more thing, because I wasn't here last week, so I get a little bit of extra time today because you didn't have to listen to me last week. But how about, I mean, it's Lent, right? How about that Pope? His comments on what we need to let go of for Lent. He could have been unity. I mean, letting go of critical speech of other people, just not doing it. And his remarks are beautiful. He's not my Pope because I've never been Catholic, but I am adopting that guy. It's amazing.
Cool. Thank you.
Bravo.
I'd like to welcome Diane and Veldon and Sydney.
Thank you.
Um,
And Gretchen,
and Gretchen, yes, sorry, there's Gretchen. Good morning. Thanks for catching me in my myopia. Um, so last week we began this lesson, and the first section we did, the first 6 paragraphs, explained God as principle, and one of the takeaways for me was this line here at the beginning of paragraph 6: God is individualized in each of us, and individualized is inspiration, life, strength, wisdom, power, and love, and any good that we can conceive. But to know God in this personal way, we need to get very still, to withdraw our attention from everything in the outer and direct it within us, centering it near our heart. So that was the takeaway for me from last week. So before we begin the next section, anybody else have a reflection or comment from last week's conversation?
I definitely do,
Okay.
because I've never had one, and I was, oh, what was last week? But this message, I've read 6 or 7 or 8 times and copied parts of it. It was so clear and simple. It's like, well, what else do we need? What's Marty going to, add to this? I just loved it.
Okay. Well, thanks, Lillian. What
I'm
was
with
it?
Lillian. I had the same reaction and I read it a lot and I thought, yeah, you were not like that when you were middle-aged. With number 6 in particular. I mean, I think that aging has granted me such a gift of surrender and waiting and listening and trying to follow divine guidance, as opposed to that feeling of what do I have to do next? What am I in charge of? What's my job to interfere? I think that I think I would have had a very different life if I had been studying these things when I was in my 40s and 50s, because I was a force. I was a force, all right, but I was not in a good way work wise, but not in a good way inner self wise. And it's so much easier now to not feel like I have to provide everything for everybody. So I love that lesson, particularly number 6.
Great, me too.
I love that, Janet. And, I would just say, I guess we all need to offer ourselves some grace because I feel like I was exposed to all of this in my 30s and 40s, and I still didn't get it, or I didn't internalize it the way I am now. So, maybe we do get older, wiser, mellower, more in tune. I don't know. Maybe it comes when it's supposed to, no matter
Great.
where we are in our trajectory.
When the student's ready, the teacher will appear.
It also helps to have a spiritual base in the way that I've had Myrtle Fillmore in my 60s and 70s, because the older people I know who do not have a spiritual base are just worse in the same. They want to control everything and they can't. They forget, they don't do it right, they're making mistakes. And I say, you got to calm down, you got to slow down. But if you don't have a spiritual underpinning, I think, Sydney, whatever you were doing in those days, you were better for it for having your background in what you do,
Right.
for sure.
It's like going to school. When we're in first grade, we don't learn algebra. We learn the simple, building blocks of math. And as we build, we understand more of math. Algebra was always there. We just weren't ready for it. But as we learn the principles of math, we could get higher into the understanding of the higher principles. I kind of feel like that's where we are as human beings.
Yes,
Well said.
and ahead of us is still quantum physics.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
There were always some of
Right.
those kids in the class that were math prodigies. There were always some of those kids who just got it. They didn't even have to learn it. They just seemed to know it. And maybe that was Jesus. I don't know. I'm just drawing, parallels, metaphors, I guess.
Yeah. Anything else that anybody would like to raise about last week's experience?
I went all week with the word ineffable. So anyone I met, I just said ineffable. And it meant I opened up to new aspects to all relations. So I was very happy about that. Thank you.
Somebody have a radio on or something?
Oh, stopped.
Okay. So Leo, I think it's ironic that we have the word ineffable, which of course means something can't be explained in words.
Mm-hmm.
So human beings are ingenious enough to come up with a word for things that can't be expressed in words. I love it. Kind of like Jehovah.
Well, for me, it meant I no longer put my limits on them.
Correct. It's almost what our daily word was saying today about release.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. So let's plow onward. So we're now in this next section, explain God as law, which is 7, 8, and 9. Who would read number 7? Let's see. Let's read 7 and 8. Who would read 7 and 8 for us?
I will.
Okay, thank you.
The realization that God is principle forms a sure foundation for faith. It is the assurance that the everlasting arms of being are ever present to support that perfect, unchanging law directs the whole universe. The Father of lights is the steadfast Spirit, with whom can be no variation, neither shadow that is cast by turning. James 1, paragraph 17. God as principle is the unchangeable life, love, substance, and intelligence of being. Principle doesn't occupy space, nor has it any limitations of time or so-called matter. It exists eternally as the one underlying source or cause out of which all proceeds. Divine law is without variation. It is never changed to suit the convenience of man, but it is the same yesterday and today, yeah, and forever. Hebrews 13, paragraph 8. When man understands this law and conforms to it, then all things are possible. Matthew 19, paragraph 26. It will be noted from the foregoing that there are two phases of principle. There is the passive phase or essence, which we designate as the source from which everything proceeds. It is the great reservoir of unexpressed good, the mind substance in which all ideas inhere. There is also the active phase, the law, the cause, which is the rule of or working power that produces the results.
Thanks, Leo. Would you read the 3 footnotes that were part of that?
Note 1. Oh, that one, yeah. It doesn't occupy space, nor has it any limitations of time. Do not confuse God as principle with the principles of space and time. An example of a metaphysical principle not conditioned by time and space is, quote, there is a perfect and elegant solution to every problem, unquote. The number 2, the source as one presence. Number 3, the law, the cause, one power.
All right, thank
4,
you.
oh yeah, so
Thank you. No, that's all right.
okay.
Okay, so paragraph 7 and 8. Comments, thoughts, questions, disagreements?
Yeah, I was thinking about healing last week, and I had a lot of idea about how to say space-time and substance. And for instance, my arm. Is my arm all empty space, or is it substance in, how you say that? In being, but being and becoming. And what about it? What if my arm moves? What's happening then? And
Here comes quantum physics.
well, no, not so much quantum physics, but the amazing fact that where science says there is nothing, we say there is substance or potentiality. And that made me more and more wondering. I love it. I just love it. I love this whole idea. Thank you.
Well, and interestingly, thank you, Leo. And interestingly enough, to jump to what Sydney will probably say, is that quantum physicists now believe that what we used to call a vacuum is actually a seething cauldron of potentiality, a potential virtual reality. I'm not saying that's the same thing as substance, because substance, I believe, is something much more profound than the physical realities that quantum physics pays attention to.
Yeah.
But it's at least a metaphor for what's being thought here. Because principle does not occupy, just like the quantum foam, principle does not occupy space or has any limitations of time or so-called matter. It exists eternally as the one underlying source or cause out of which all proceeds.
It's so hard to explain this to a child. And I wish when I was growing up, as I'm sure many of you do, that I wouldn't have gotten the concept that God was a man. But when you say things like, when he says things like the Father of lights, for a child's mind, that goes to Father. I mean, the only Father that you know. And so I've spent most of my life unlearning the default of Father to the guy in the Sistine Chapel, or God to the guy in the Sistine Chapel. So my granddaughters don't go to church, and my daughter was raised in unity from the time she was born. So I was trying to tell my little 6-year-old granddaughter that I just was telling her that, you know, God, God is not a man, and God is not a woman. God is like, I don't know, like energy or gravity or love. And I'm like, but it's, and she goes, I know, Cece, we just don't know, do we? Well, I didn't go any further because, well, we just don't know. But I said, but we do know God is love. And she goes, yeah, we know that. So it's just,
Well, unless we become like little children, we cannot enter the kingdom.
well, yes. However, I, as a little child, learned really early in Sunday school at 5 years old when I was coloring those pictures. My sister Lillian took us to Sunday school when I think we were 4 or 5, but anyway, that, we were coloring pictures of Jesus and talking about his father. And of course, Jesus's father had to look like my dad because that's the only father I have. So it's just, I don't know. I was in kindergarten and then I got into higher math.
Yeah, thank you.
But do you see how confusing this is? He starts out really good. The everlasting arms of being, the ever present support. Unchanging law directs the whole universe. And then he used that word there, the Father of lights. So then your mind goes, "Rrr."
One of the things that I conclude from what you're saying is not something I've I've always been wrestling with since I started Unity is the inadequacy of language to describe things that are ineffable, as Leo pointed out. And and we're stuck because language is our medium of connection with each other. It's the good news is it's not necessarily our medium of connection with the divine.
Well, that
And
is good.
that's where we kind of get caught. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but we're caught with this. It's like right now I'm using language to communicate something I wish I could communicate much less clumsily, but this is what I got.
Well, he uses a lot of analogies. I mean, he says that God is like a chicken who gathers her chicks under her wings and protects them, but we don't think of God as a chicken, but yet there's a whole force of people out there who see God as a guy, a big guy, bigger than anybody else guy. I don't know.
And yet,
I
yeah,
I now understand. I now understand it was all metaphoric. If you had to explain to people in their own terms, in their own language, at their own time, in their own space, God. And the Jewish God was meaner than than Jesus' God. He kind of that was his message, is that God isn't that the Jews were teaching, but oy vey.
yeah. And then you get over to Buddhism and Taoism, and there's no discussion of God.
No, there is no God in there.
So that's
No external God.
to just complicate it further. Gretchen,
This is a great conversation. I mean, I think I appreciate all the trappings that we've just talked about in terms of kind of the who of who we're talking about. And when I look at the number one and number two about the source and the cause, this is where I return to the idea. For me, this is just for me that El Shaddai captures that the El captures the cause and the Shaddai captures the source, and that the Shaddai is the Almighty, and is that are those wings that were talked about of kind of gathering the chicks under the wings, or the breast that feeds, or whatever, however one wants to connect with that. But that's how I think about that, those pieces, and I think that it pulls it away from ideals of peopleness, but puts it inside of what is source doing and delivering as that all presence that always is, and what is cause doing as the role or working power, the energy that's moving through, and I feel it when energy is moving through me, and so I can have it I have my own language about the reality of that. So just to add that to the conversation. Thank you.
I do not know the reference point they're talking about, El Shaddai. Is this Judaism? Is it Jesus's reference? I missed that chapter in my.
Oh, sure. So El Shaddai particularly is translated from the Hebrew into English as the Almighty. And so when God speaks to Abraham and reveals himself to Abraham before the Isaac episode, he says, "I am the Almighty," and I'll put the reference in the chat. And so what he's saying is, "I am Shaddai, I am," and that is translated as the Almighty. And so there are places through where other places in the Old Testament that say El Shaddai, that put the God Almighty, Almighty God, and we get that again in the Revelation. It's through the Greek, so it's not through the Hebrew, but there's pieces in the Revelation, I think particularly around 21 or 22 at the end, that is speaking about the Almighty. And for me, that is source.
So is this parallel to Aui, Aui, like the Judaism, and I might not be pronouncing it right, but Aui.
You mean Yahweh?
Yeah, there you go. I was
Right.
phonetically pronouncing it. Thank
Yes, yes, yes. So we went from Yahweh, and so before God announces himself to Abraham as Yahweh, I am that I am, which is he doesn't actually pronounce that to Abraham. I think it's just more in Exodus that he reveals himself as El Shaddai, and so it's these ways that the name of God is coming through, and there's ways of thinking about, is Yahweh the cause piece of this? Is Yahweh the Holy Spirit piece that's coming through the cause and the source? I mean, I think there's lots of different ways to look at what those pieces are, but what we speak about generally as God has many different variations, or a cluster of variations in the Old Testament, and then clusters of variations of Yahweh and a characteristic of Yahweh. So I won't go too long down that path, but I think the spirit of it is that God, which I just capitalize now because I think it's just easier for me whenever I'm writing about it, because it's like there's a multitude of dimensions of things. And I think that's what Charles Thumber was talking about in number 7 at the very top, where he was talking, if you would be so kind, Marty, as to go back to 7. Well, maybe it was in 6. All those characteristics of God, love, light. Here we go. That first sentence: strength, wisdom, power, all of those things. There are pieces inside of Old Testament that is speaking about God expressing himself in those various characteristics. And so all of it to say, I think there's a lot of ways that we can put forward an experience. We have experience of God, and there's lots of ways to try to put language around it, because it is ultimately, what is it, ineffable, as you guys were saying. But the El Shaddai was really powerful for me to kind of sit with. And
Yahweh and El Shaddai are principle, not our principle. They're the universal God.
yes, I mean, I will not put myself as an expert on any of this. I would say that if we go back down to number 8, for me, the L is the cause and the source is the Shaddai. And that they work in collaboration together. And then the Yahweh is in and around that. It's this kind of unit. It is another way of thinking about the 3 in 1.
In other words, my takeaway, Gretchen, is that you are helping share with us different ways that the text of the Bible in unity is showing up metaphorically.
Yes.
And so, for example, while you were talking, I was thinking back to what Leo said: source as being and cause as becoming. I mean, there's just different ways to conceptualize what the Fillmores, or what Charles is trying to teach us here.
Absolutely. And I think what I'm kind of adding to that is that there's scriptural ways of considering that isn't just like us talking about it. Like, there's been long-standing ways to think about the variations of how God reveals himself to us and brings us to the number 6 thing that y'all were talking about when we started, which is so powerful in terms of knowing God in a personal way, that God reveals to us in so many personal ways, and that's been there's a long-standing written tradition about that.
Yeah, and the what's being gotten at here from everything you're saying and Claudia's been saying is that principle is individualized in us, and because we are persons, it is difficult for us to turn the principle into some dry, desiccated, external, distant, cold expression. It's actually alive and thriving in a beating heart and a, an organism that feels very personal to us.
Yes.
And again,
Well,
we're in that paradox of of uh, language and intellectual understanding versus just experience.
yeah.
And
Well said.
in some ways, Marty, what I just thought of when you said that, when you went through that, in some ways, I think that's why people connect with Jesus. And some people, and they're in my family, our family, so it's almost like Jesus is God. And I always get confused because they talk about Jesus with God as God. And yet it's personal. He's Jesus was real and he embodied as, all the attributes of God. So then they began to worship. What is Butterworth said? They worship the pointer and not what it's being pointed to. And you know what? That's okay.
Yep.
If that's how they get to love and oneness and compassion and everything that Pope Leo reminded us we should be doing, that's okay, I guess. I mean, it's the other. Okay, that's it. Let's stay. I'm going to stop now. But thank you for the epiphany.
Something occurs to me, and that is that we the things that we're reading here we should accept as an explanation of things. But when you have someone that has had, I think of the sports event where the quarterback says, "Oh, thank God we won the game," and it's as though God helped them win the game. So, okay, let's just take this now and break it down to every event, everything that happened in the game, and then you have all of the people and so forth that are all a participant in this event. And so, how do you have to break that down into each individual's contribution to God making this happen, and then oh, holy smoke!
The other team's God wasn't as big as that guy's God, I guess. Huh?
Could I comment on that?
Yeah,
Please
please.
do.
I, I'm an Iowa basketball fan, and I saw an interview with their point guard, he's one of these guys where they're saying he'll be in the first round of the pick, and he's the greatest thing going. So anyhow, 3 games in a row, he broke his all-time scoring records. Just it's just better and better and better. So they're interviewing him, and this guy says, "So, what's the deal with you? Every week now you're breaking your old record." And he says, "I give it all to God." And I thought, "Oh crap, here we go." Because I'm not one who enjoys listening to people preach. But he made an interesting second comment. He says, "I give it all to God." And he says, "By that I mean God gave me my talent, so I play basketball for God." And I thought that was kind of appropriate. The first,
It is appropriate, and if you then take all of the things that are the principle here that we talk about, and all of the factors of all the things that relate to that, then all of those things in his body and so forth are at play that all contribute to his success and things. So it's not just, it seems to me like it's not just one thing, it's a whole combination of things.
Well,
well,
we could apply that to ourselves.
Yes.
God gave me it all, so I should give it all to God, right? I should follow God's principles.
Well, you can take this a step further. I like the idea that God is principle, and that gets back to my often saying, well, God is spirit, and we're all part of the pie called God, and each and every one of us, in one way or another, get into the energy that connects us all. And so now we're into a situation of the energy that we're connected with, which is all a part of this as well. And so that explains a lot of unusual things that take place.
Dick, were you going to comment?
Well, I was going to add one other one-liner that I think is what what the other person is saying. There was a guy who was a professional baseball player, and he was also pretty God oriented, but he was always preaching to his team members and coaches, like if they get their spiritual crap together, that it would help their game and all that stuff. And so he, at the bottom of the ninth, he hits a walk-off homer. And as he comes into the dugout, he goes up to the manager and he says, "See, I'm telling you, if you get God, you can do this stuff." And the manager said to him, "Well, what does this mean then for the guy that threw you the hanging fastball?" And there's the other side of this bit about God is in my sports or whatever, or in my success, because that implies, so many of them imply that God makes them successful or defeat somebody, and I'm not for that. But the idea that God could make them, we all have our own personal abilities and they're God given. I go with that, but anyhow, that's it.
That reminds me of what Lincoln said in his second inaugural address about both sides of the Civil War praying to the same God and neither one of them getting the answer to their prayer.
Yeah.
Because God has, as Lincoln said, God has, the Almighty has, there's the Almighty. The Almighty has purposes of its own. All right, shall we move on to number 9? Who will read number 9?
I will.
Thank you.
Okay, number 9. A parallel may be found in the principle of mathematics or of music. Arithmetic is probably the simplest part of mathematics. The principle or foundation of arithmetic is the unit. All numbers proceed from the unit and are related to it and to one another according to the value of each. The value of a number remains forever the same, and 3 can never be the same value as 6, nor can 6 ever be the same value as 9. A simple illustration of principle looked at as rule or law is that 2 times 3 are 6. If we know the value of numbers, then wherever we use this rule or law, we know that the result will be the same, regardless of whether it applies to apples, horses, stars, or dollars. As an outer symbol of the numbers, we use figures. The figures themselves have no value. They are simply a form we use to symbolize the values. And I'll read the number 4 attribution here. Number 4, a parallel may be found in the principle of mathematics. A principle of mathematics is like God in 2 ways. 1, it is not conditioned by time or space. And 2, mathematical mistakes are not punishments. Math can only promise perfection. God as law is always beneficent.
Thanks, Diane.
I like a better explanation here on the number 2 on the addendum. Mathematical mistakes are not punishments. What do you suppose that means?
I think it means, well, I'm sorry for jumping in here. Anybody, what do you think?
No, we want to hear from you.
Yeah, Marty, let me hear.
I think it means that if a mistake is made, it's neither right nor wrong. It's just a mistake.
Okay.
It's
Because
not it's not being it doesn't lead to corporal or psychological punishment.
right, yeah, the word punishment seems a corporeal punishment, bad things happening, and I just don't see the fact that you make a mathematical mistake and say 2 and 2 equals 5, that you should go to hell or something.
Right. So the next clause, math can only promise perfection, for me means that we learn from our mistakes. So when we make a mistake, the good news is we can learn from it and move toward perfecting it.
I'd also like a better definition as the last sentence in number 9 is, as an outer symbol of the numbers, we use figures. Does that mean the figure is the letter or the number 2,
Yeah.
3,
Yeah.
4, 5? Okay, so figures are the numbers themselves. Okay.
Right. So the way I read that, Diane, is that when I write the number 2, I'm using that linear graphic
Yeah.
symbol to represent something that's universal.
Mm-hmm. That we all
And maybe other languages write that number differently, but that still has the same intrinsic meaning. So like the Roman numeral is two parallel lines,
Yeah.
vertical lines. It still
Right.
means the same thing as this thing that we write in Arabic
That's right.
numerals.
That's right.
Yes, and that it is not, I don't have two of anything right in front of me, but it's not.
Yeah, you have two hands. There you go.
I'll get two hands. Right. That number is not this.
Correct.
It's speaking about this, but it's not this. And that I remember the first time I read that, it was just like, whoa. That's, Diane, you picked up on, for me, the most powerful sentence in number 9.
Yes. Thanks.
Other thoughts? Does anyone find satisfaction with the statement that a parallel may be found for the idea of God as principle in mathematics or music? Does that work? Does that not work?
It muddies it up.
Okay, say more.
It works. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lillian.
Well, I think that original that we read last week is so clear, and now it just kind of, whatever they add doesn't seem to help for me.
Okay, just throw the paragraph out.
Okay.
It feels like it to me, like it harkens back to that inadequacy of language that we were talking about earlier. That there's just not a way in language, and maybe this is me taking number 9 even a step further than it intends to go, but all we've got are analogies, all we've got are comparisons, all we've got are concepts to try to illuminate this thing that
One thing that occurs to me is that all of the things that we've been reading, I trust, are things that Fillmore put down as an understanding and to teach us about these things. And I find that what is here makes an awful lot of sense. And it's amazing to me that one person has been able to sort this out as well as he has.
Yeah. Yeah, that's mind blowing.
Yeah, in one person.
Yeah. And we know that, I think we know that he had collaborators on this. I don't know about the correspondence course, but he certainly had Emily. He certainly leaned on Emily. Katie a lot. And of course, Myrtle, um, I don't know, maybe he was channeling. That's an easy way to write.
Well, if you take a look at this, isn't this in itself the connection with all those people that brought these thoughts to us? Is that not part of the energy that is supposedly throughout the universe that these people have gotten together and their energy now is being passed on to us? That's how they got together, and how this again is God as principle speaking, I
Yeah,
think.
that's how the Bible was written.
Gretchen?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great thing to chew on. For me, when I look at Charles Fillmore and the writing, I find him to be a clear channel for communicating things that have been communicated for as long as there have been tools to communicate. And there's so much Emerson in this. There's so much Meister Eckhart in this. There's so much um, uh, Augustine in this, and those are just the people who had their stuff written down and carried forward. So I think Charles, I mean, I don't know the man, but I would suspect that he would be humble enough to say that he is helping aggregate and clarify and streamline for the age in which he's writing. The other thing I would say is, whether it's muddy or it's clear, I think I return to where Emily Cady speaks about at some point, where she says, put all the books down, stop reading what other people say about this, and have your own experience. And so much of these things is about helping prepare me to be able to open, be receptive, and then interpret my experience in a way that is revelatory. And that's like all of the Charles Fillmore is still pointing to the moon, I guess is how I would speak it. But he's not, I'm not, I only have my own experience with the moon when I say, thank you for showing me what direction to point and what I should consider when looking in that direction. But I'm still having my own experience in looking at the moon. And so, what I love about this is the clarity in that. Okay, I'll say one more thing about the mathematics. It dawned on me recently that the number pi, if people are familiar with the concept of pi, 3.14159 dot 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 dot, that's still going. Like there is still a non-repeated sequence of numbers in that still happening. And if I were to say, if I needed to speak to somebody who is into math about God, I would say, consider pi for a moment and consider the continuous outpouring of that and its perfection in describing aspects of a circle, which is the essence of unity. Like, just be there, trip on that, and see what comes. So thank you.
I just love what you just said about the moon. Somebody can tell you about the moon. They can give you the astronomical, information on the moon. They can give you the mythology of the moon. They can tell you it's green cheese. They can tell you, there's so much to know about the moon that somebody can tell you. But I love what you said. Okay, that's fine. But I'm still going to go out and enjoy the moon and be with the moon and experience the moon. And that is wonderful. Thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. I mean, in some ways, and it's not to denigrate the power of this group, like, we're still talking about the aspects of the moon in this group. And sometimes, many times actually, when I'm here and Marty has seen this happen, like, I will be in the middle of my own revelatory experience of the moon while we're talking about the moon. And that is even more beautiful when energy moves through in that way. But it's both. It's like, this is vital for me to have new ways of appreciating the moon as just a metaphorical thing, but also
Great.
And hearing your experience, like what does it mean when you have touch with source and cause?
Very well said, Gretchen.
And what if what Charles Fillmore is doing here is this very sophisticated, extensive koan?
Koan.
So a koan is a tool of the Zen Buddhists to make people stop using the mind to experience reality. And the way that they teach you to do it is to force your mind to work so hard to solve a problem that cannot be solved by the mind that we finally give up. And
What is the sound of one hand clapping?
Exactly.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah. So a parallel may be found in principle or mathematics. Explain God as divine mind. So notice that word explain is a completely intellectual exercise.
Mhm.
And what made me think of that, Gretchen, is when you reminded us of Emily Cady's one of my all-time favorite lines in Lessons in Truth. It's like, stop reading.
Stop reading.
And here we are reading.
Right. I mean, the beauty of that, right? But it's like it's there, I mean,
Right.
I'm reading Keep a True Lent right now, and there's so many things. It's like, yeah, read and then go out into the world. Read and then go out into the world and be inside of your own world.
Or use reading as the experience of the moon, to go back to the
Yes.
metaphor. Because the truth is, reading is a divine activity, just as not reading is a divine activity, because it's all principle.
Right.
It's all cause and being.
But what blows my mind is that this guy, I don't think he even had a sixth grade education. Now, albeit that schools were more robust and you learned more then, but why I said maybe he's channeling, because look at how, your point is well taken. He could have drawn from Thoreau and Emerson, and Marty did a whole thing for us on the philosophers of the time, and what was the valley, the Hudson Valley or something, Marty, I forget, but I was impressed. And maybe he's just synthesizing it, but try writing something like this. It's like mind blowing, golly.
But we all channel all the time if we connect to our higher self.
That's true.
Yeah. Actually, I would say we channel whether we're connected to our higher self consciously or not, because we are, what does it say here? We are individualized. God is individualized in us.
Well, and he talks a lot about going to the source.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So he spent a lot of time in meditation.
Well, my friends, we're got a few minutes left here, so rather than start this non-controversial next section, explain God as divine mind, just like to open it up to anybody who hasn't had a chance to share or speak anything that anybody. Yeah, Janet, please unmute.
There we go. I love listening to this, and I love how I don't try to understand at all what anybody's talking about, because I do realize that I was years ago, there's something in the New Testament about how Jesus came up with all the parables for all the regular people that didn't have that kind of cosmic mind. And that he had a select few that he would then go after giving the speech, he'd go somewhere and sit and explain the real part of it or some other aspect of it, but it wasn't for everybody. And it helped me a lot today to hear Lillian say, yeah, well, not so much for me, this part of it, because that has been the case all along for me. But I know there has to be a spiritual source for everybody. Every human being, if you've got an IQ of 220, it's a way of getting God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit, there's something for everybody. Pick your topic. There's 100 books written about it, and none of it matters. It's all okay. We're wanting to connect to that power greater than ourselves, feel peace, feel happy, some joy, and it's enough. And I couldn't have done this at all, a number of years ago, because I would have been so self-critical that I was too stupid to understand what you were talking about. I'm not too stupid. It's not my thing. My thing is something way more pragmatic. So there's something for everybody, and that's why I love the Fillmores. Because wherever it came from, whatever the source for the written word and the spoken word, it touched people where they needed to hear. And I think that's good.
And
That's it.
that's why I love this group. Because, to your point, everybody is filtering or experiencing these words and then sharing. And it's like, oh, God is the moon? I'll take it, got it. That works for me. I just thank you, everybody. And thank you, Marty. Thank you, Marty.
Yes, thank you,
Thank you, Marty.
Well, you're welcome. And there is a method to this madness that Claudia just referenced. There is, for me, when two or more are gathered together is a real practical principle that there is something about us being together. This particular is 11 of us, 12 of us today. And, that number varies from week to week, but it doesn't really matter. There is something about the openness, the open-heartedness that each of us brings to this that generates, and for me, it generates an experience that I can't generate on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. I mean, I come here for the group energy. And any insight that I get, to me, that's just the cherry on top of the sundae. But the sundae is the togetherness and the joy of learning. I think those of you who used to go to Capital City Unity back in the days when I was the principal speaker know that I still had the energy of wanting church to be less monological, where the teacher gets up and preaches and everybody passively consumes this, to dialogue, which is everybody has the wisdom. We're all individualized versions of God. So each one of us has equal authority to speak to this stuff. And that's what this group is. This is what I think church really is. It's what I want it to be. That
yes.
If we were physically together, we'd be sitting in a circle.
I love it.
Well said, Marty.
Thank you.
But I did like the meditations and the music.
Yeah. Well, nothing would prevent us from doing that before we open the dialogue. That's why we start with daily word here.
Absolutely. It's enough. It's enough.
Yeah. So anything else for the good of the order?
We can always sing at the end, Claudia.
No, we can't. We can't even do the light of God together. But that's okay. We're all unique.
So I'll tell you that for us, this is our Sunday go to meeting time. This is going to church.
Oh,
Amen.
sister.
Amen.
All right. Well, speaking of the prayer for protection, let's finish with sharing that in our own inimitable way of togetherness. The light
of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.
Wow.
Yay, us! We were right on it.
Isn't that great that the prayer has the presence and the power of God built into it?
Yep.
Just what we were talking about today.
Old James did his job, or Jim. Old Jim was really good at this, you know. But I do have to say, he did not say, and all is well. He didn't feel it was necessary. He felt that it was enough to say, wherever we are, God is. Wherever we are, God is.
And
Wherever
all is well.
God is.
He didn't add that. He didn't
I
think
know, I know.
when it was brought up to him, he said, no, no, I didn't write it that way because it doesn't need to be said.
So,
I'm just giving you a footnote in time and history.
so which version got to the moon?
He did it. The one that he wrote, because he never would say it.
Right. So the all is well is not on the moon.
It's not there.
No, it's not
Okay.
on the.
The God
They
is.
came to Christ
But
Jesus.
God is. That's right, Diane.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. On that note, my friends, we are adjourned.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you,
Take care.
Marty.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Marty.
Thank you.